Oh, there we are. Hello. How are you? Thanks for stopping by. And welcome to Stories by Will. Today we have a beautiful story that we're going to read, and it's from Tales Told in Holland. This is a book that I learned to read from when I was a toddler, and I'm so happy here today to share this with you. So let me see if I can get everything running correctly here. And I lost my custom. There we go. Let's hide that. Get that out of there. And we'll stop this. All right. So, if you happen to see my stream from yesterday, you will see that we have this beautiful book here, Tales Told in Holland. This is a very, very, very old book, so I'm going to be very careful in turning the pages. But I want to share this with you. So, this was last published in 1948, but these are stories from the 1800s, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. So, let's get into it. The very first story is called Altchen and Berend-John, a tale from the province of Overso. Now, this is, from Holland. They're Dutch, okay? So, let's get into it here. And let's share screen. So there are a few photos in here that I'm going to show you. And because it's better to look at these photos than me. And here we go. All right. Very good. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you'll enjoy the story. Altchen and Berend-John, a tale from the province of Overso. There lived once in a poor little house on the edge of a lonely heath in Overso a pretty lassie named Altchen and her father, Bartis Aranik. Now, Altchen had a sweetheart, a poor young farmhand called Berend-John. He was not much blessed with money, young Berend-John, and that's a fact. He knew more of cows and butter and pigs than of golden florins. But for all that, he was a Sunday child with a sunny temper, and he knew the lilt of the merry song, and the joy of the strong right arm better than the next fellow, so that none could help but love him. That is to say, none could help but love him. Who loved sunshine and life and joy better than golden florins? And Altchen loved him with all her heart. As to old Bardas, her father, however, well, that was a different matter. Quite a different matter. Bardas Aranik was a poor peasant. A cow and a pig or two were all his worldly possessions. To him, it seemed the most wonderful thing in the world to be master of florins. Florins are coins. And he hadn't even a few extra copper to jingle in his pocket. Now it chanced at just this time that there lived nearby a certain rich old farmer named Schulte. And Schulte, like Baron John, came a courting the pretty Altchen. Ah, now there's a husband for my daughter, said the old Bartus to himself. Rich as a nobleman, aye, even richer. There's a man to put florins and ducats into my empty pockets. And he would have nothing but Altchen, should make ready at once to marry old Schulte. Well, of course, it was true that Schulte was richer than a nobleman, but it was also true that he was uglier than a screech owl. He had long, thin legs like a stork's, and short, puffed up body, monstrously fat, tiny pig eyes, deep sunken in rows of flabby pink flesh. He looked like a huge sack of meal going about on two slender twigs. And if he had been ugly in appearance only, but no, he was stingy as a mole and as covetous as a kite. He loved nothing but money. All his life long, he had thought only of getting, and getting. What did he know of giving? He snatched, and he grabbed, and he clutched, and he heaped up, and he counted, and he hoarded, till the chink of the florins was the only music in life that would give him any pleasure. Never in all his days had he sung a merry song. When he walked on the road full of sunshine with birds above, and the heath of the sea of a purple bloom about him, he thought only of florins. When a veil of purple bloom about him was when a veil of floating mist hung over the fields, and all was still and lonely with the wonder of this mystery, he continued to think of nothing but florins, florins, florins. Those are coins. It was not until he grew old that Schulte began to think he would like to buy something with his money. Then he looked about and made up his mind to buy himself a wife. He would take to be Vor Schulte, none but the prettiest girl in the neighborhood. That was how he had chosen Altchen. After that, it was give your daughter to a rich man, friend Bartus, and sons in laws with treasures like mine are none too easy to find, and other such arguments, all sounding more like clinking florins than of simple music and love. Well, Bartus didn't need any argument to make him say yes to old Schulte's wooing. No, not he. The florins did the courting necessary. But Altchen even knew what was going forward. She found herself shut up tight in the house and kept fast under lock and key. You shall never see that lout of a Berend-John again, cried her father. But you shall spin and sew and make ready for marriage with a man of means, a man as rich as a nobleman. Little did Bartus care that Altchen wept and begged, and she said she would rather have the fattest of their grunting pigs for her bridegroom. He was her father. He could command. He would give her away to whomsoever he chose. Thereafter, no man was permitted in the house but that meal sack on twigs, old Schulte. And old Schulte grimaced and screwed up his face with his button nose and his pig-like eyes as he tried to smile on lovely Altchen. Oh me, oh my, Often in those days, there were tears in Altchen's pretty blue eyes. Often and often, tears. And as to poor Berend-John, what was he to do? He roamed sadly about Altchen's home, trying to catch even a glimpse of her. If he could have seen her little finger or the tiniest wisp of her hair, if he could have heard her voice for a single moment, it would have been enough. So foolish was his heart, so tender, so innocent his love. Look, what did he care? What village folks who passed made fun of him and lingered by the house? He thought only of Altchen. Didn't he know that she was young like himself, and her love for him was as sweet, as foolish as the love that showered upon her? Now, one night, Berend-John, lost deep in thought of his trouble, was wandering along a little creek that watered the last fertile land on the edge of the hearth. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Out in out in the dark somewhere stood a willow tree. Day in and day out, that willow tree looked just like any other willow tree that grew along the roadside, gracefully nodding its head and rustling its silver leaves in the breeze. Only if a man passing said something mean or false would the willow tree grow in a twinkling till it became as big and overpowering as a mighty oak. Then would issue from its breath, swifter and stronger than the storm wind, and a voice like thunder. And if he who passed had said something too wicked, indeed, if he had been thought something wicked, there would come rocks from the trees pelting through the air, till the wicked one ran for his life. Now, the reason for all this was there dwelt in the willow tree the willow man. This willow man disliked what was ugly and mean, and he loved what was good and beautiful. The real business of his life was to help Sunday children. As Berend-John walked along by the creek on this particular night, he remembered all this. He remembered he was a Sunday child, and he said to himself in a twinkling, I shall ask the willow man to help me. No sooner than he said this, quite distinctly, than he heard a soft rustle in the air, like a ripple over the water. Still, still as far away, lap of the sea at night, and yet it was very near. At that sound, Berend-John scarcely knew whether to be glad or to run away. In a moment, perhaps, he would see the great willow giant towering above him. But just then a voice, as kind as his mother, said, Don't be afraid, Berend-John. I am the willow man, and you are a Sunday child. I shall help you. There are alack, all too many Sunday children on earth. Most men toil and strive and labor to find their happiness, and in so doing, they never find it at all. But the Sunday children are always happy, though they take no trouble about it whatever. Most of them, I am sorry to say, don't know what to do with their happiness. They play with it and fritter it away and make nothing of it. You, Berend-John, I believe, will enjoy us seriously and to some good purpose. And for that reason, I shall help you. At those words, Berend-John fell to his knees for gratitude, but the kind voice went on. You need not kneel. Look, I shall make a light so we can see each other better. And the willow man turned around 7 times and stamped 3 times with his foot on the earth. And there sprang up suddenly out of the ground a clear white flame. It did not spread, but kept on burning brightly just where they were. Berend-John saw the willow man very plainly. Was this the willow giant? A huge, towering willow giant? An ordinary, good natured little fellow he seemed, just like a farmer from over in Winsham way. He might have come from any one of the villages near Yessel River. Could such an everyday little man be more powerful than Bartis Aranek and Farmer Schulte together? Berend-John looked very doubtful, but the willow man asked him simply, can Bartis Aranek and Farmer Schulte make fire? It was true. They could not. You are right, said Berend-John. If anyone can help me, you can. Trust me, said the willow man, and he put his hand on Berend-John's dark hair to bless him. Trust me, I shall help you. To the next screen here. I don't know why these aren't lined up. Go here. There we go. The willow man. Trust me, said the willow man. Even as he spoke, the fire went out as suddenly as it had sprung up, and all became dark. The willow man had vanished. Berend-John held his breath, listening. No leaf rustled, no ripple moved. The dark was like a desert hall, not the trembling of the breath of air, not the swaying of a branch. No more did the voice of the willow man fall on Berend-John's ear, but within his soul and spirit it kept on ringing with joyous promise, sweet and clear like a little bell. Through the days that followed, Berend-John felt safe and secure, though no reason for his faith could be outwardly seen yet. He knew that the willow man would help him. He had but to wait in patience and to find out how this would come about. Now, the third evening after Berend-John had met the willow man, Bartis Aranek was home alone with his daughter. Dusk had fallen in the little room, and Bartis sat bent over his spinning wheel that might be able to use all the last faint gleams of light. That the poor land of the Bartis Aranek on the edge of the earth, there is rich land over Essel. But there is poor land too, and many a peasant like Bartis, who farm yield very little return, made both ends meet by spinning. When it was altogether dark, Bartis rose. It's time for bed, he said. Well, to rest, my child. Ah, little did this stubborn old peasant know that he would not rest much that night. Just as he was pulling back the curtains of his bed, which was built like a cubbyhole into the wall, he heard outside, quite near the house, the anxious lowing of a cow. The cow's broken loose! The cow's broken loose! She's out of the barn, he cried. And off he hurried with great excitement, calling as she went, Here, boss! Here, boss! Here, boss! No sooner had he crossed the threshold of the door, he saw the form of the cow looming just ahead in the dark. Here, bossy! He cried with a coaxing and wielding quiver. But his cow did not heed his voice. With a little kick and plunge, she made off suddenly across the road and out onto the hearth. Out, out, and away into the blackness of the night. As she went, she bellowed softly, as though she were afraid. Now that was bad, very bad. There might be wolves on the hearth. Quickly the old farmer followed the cow. The faster he went, however, the faster went old Bossy. As fast as he went, as fast as through, she had been bewitched. Moreover, as she ran, all of a sudden, like magic, a light appeared on the tip of her tail and would switch back and forth like a will-o'-the-wisp in the darkness. At sight of what weird little light, Barta stopped short in his tracks. What is this world coming to? He thought. Stranger still, when Barta stopped, the cow stopped and bellowed mournfully as if waiting. But the very moment he set out again, thinking he was almost upon her, off she ran before, swinging her luminous tail behind her. Farther and farther from home she led him, over lonely plains of peat and heather, and sands and pine trees. For it is no cozy country that, no land of green grass and canals and windmills and cattle at the brink of the reedy pools, soft and gracious like the rich and placid fields of North Holland. It is lonely there on the hearth of the Overyssel, a barren, desolate land to go racing through in the dark with a swaying light like magic, leading one on and on and on. Now, at almost the same time of night, when Bartle set out on his strange adventure, a queer thing happened to Farmer Schulte. He had gone about spying at every door and locking up the house carefully, and was about to lie down in his miserly bed of dry leaves. At the moment he heard a sound which he could distinguish from every other sound in the world. Chink, chink, chink. Gold coins knocking against each other. Farmer Schulte jumped up and unbolted the door. Less than 20 feet from him on the ground lay a gray bag, which was wriggling all over as though it had been filled with scores of little mice. From inside this From inside came the sound of gold coin, chinking and jingling and tingling, dashing and clashing and pushing against each other, and singing in hard, shrill little voices, Woolly wee wee, woolly wee wee, we like to go walking far and afar to find out where the gray wolves are. Farmer Schulte stooped over, and snatched at the little bag, his eyes glistening. He almost had it. His hands were just on it, and suddenly it was jerked away, as though a string had been fastened to it, and some mischievous urchin had been playing a trick on the old Schulte. There it went, leaping like mad, pell-mell, hopping, skip and a jump. A full 20 feet it bounced like that, and then of a sudden it tumbled down again, plump, on the ground, while the ducats inside giggled and laughed and sang their everlasting Woolly wee wee, woolly wee wee, We like to go walking far and afar to find out where the gray wolves are. Now you may well believe that Farmer Schulte was both astonished and confused. But one thing he knew for certain, catch that bag of ducats he must. Never would he let such a fortune as this run away from him and escape. As he saw it lying there flat on the ground, he thought to get up by stealth. With sly and silent feet, he crept up onto it, noiseless like a sneaking cat. When he came near, he crouched in the dark, pounced, but again, just as he had the treasure almost in his grasp, it bounced out of his hand and hopped off for another 20 feet, the ducats giggling and laughing more mockingly than ever. In this remarkable manner, Farmer Schulte, too, was led on and on and on over the hearth through the dark. He followed the impish bag, while Bardus Aranuck followed the cow, the only one of the three so deeply concerned about Altchen, who was not out chasing wildly after some will-o'-the-wisp of his own selfish desire on that eventful night, was Berend-John. Berend-John laid himself quietly down on the cool grass near Altchen's house and thought to go to sleep. It was good to be able to dream near Altchen since he could not reach her. Slowly, all the world faded out of his thought, and there remained to him only the warm and fragrant sense of his love. But just at that very moment, when he would have fallen sound asleep, someone touched his shoulder. He sprang to his feet, startled, and then smiled, for it was the willow man who had awakened him. Go straight to Altchen, said the willow man. The door is not bolted. She is home alone. And let's bring up the next photo. I don't know why I can't go from one to the other. We will figure this out. Berend-John was so mightily astonished that he could only stutter and stammer. He wished to say, thank you, but he could not. Head over heels he ran, off to the homestead he ran, like a rabbit to his hole. When Altchen saw him coming, she called out in dismay that he must not come in, for her father and Farmer Schulte might appear at any moment with stout clubs to drive him away. But before two words of all this could pass the young lassie's lips, Berend-John had her in his arms. And now, pray tell, what need was there to fear that Bardus and Farmer Schulte would return before the willow man wished it? Bardus was still running after the cow, and Farmer Schulte was pursuing the hopping purse with a rink, kink, kink, and a kink. They ran through the woods and the trackless heath. They plunged through the brooks and waterways like madmen without aim. In the cloudless, dark blue sky, the moon shook with laughter and stars danced. It was a sight to make a donkey laugh, a sight to make a scarecrow dance. The willow man followed the two. He played the lute, he cut crazy capers for poor fun and merriment in serious willow giant with a hippity hop and a skip. But suddenly all grew quiet. The moon held its breath to see what would come next. Then the willow man swayed his magic wand through the air. At that, the cow stopped short, and the money bag fell plumped on the ground. Not a single ducat made such a jingle. Ha! Thought Bartles. Now I have her. And he plunged madly toward the cow. Ha! Thought Farmer Schulte. Now I have it. And he plunged madly toward the bag. But at that very moment, the cow and the bag suddenly flew up high in the air and vanished. The two men ran straight into each other's arms. Hocus pocus palate stop, shouted the willow man. Then everything began to shine and laugh again, especially the moon. Bartis and Farmer Schulte looked at each other in blank amazement. But magic had changed them entirely. The willow man had made each one look to the other just like Berend-John. Each was sure, indeed, that it was Berend-John who had plunged into his arms. And then they let out all the hatred for Berend-John they had been storing up in his heart. They took their big clubs and began to strike at each other, beating like blacksmiths on an iron. And each one thought he was beating Berend-John. There! There! They clubbed each other black and blue until they both fell to the ground and lay there as fallen logs. Whack and crack and batter out there on the earth. But all this while, back in the room where Altchen and Berend-John sat happily together, were only peace and quiet and tenderest affection. Now, in the morning, Bartis and Farmer Schulte came to themselves at the very same moment. At the very same moment, they sat up and looked into each other's eyes. Each had his own appearance again, and neither looked to the other in the least like Berend-John. Said Bartis Aranek to himself, "It was that black-hearted old rascal Schulte who beat me black and blue last night." And Schulte said to himself, "It was that black-hearted old rascal Bartis Aranek who beat me black and blue last night." With that, each one would have sprung up and been at it again with his cudgel, but alas, they both found themselves too battered to begin their fighting anew. With angry looks, they parted. "It will be a cold day before I give Altchen to that hot-headed old fire-eater," said Bartis to himself. "It will be a cold day before I make my son-in-law to that hot-headed old fire-eater," said Farmer Schulte to himself. So each went a separate way, and neither so much looked back for a single glimpse over his shoulder. And that's the end of that. With a fiddle-dee-dee and a fiddle-dee-don, there is a wedding of Altchen and good Berend-John. Their descendants live on the homestead in Terwold and Nybrook to this very day. They know the merriest tune and dance the jolliest dances. They like witty stories, and they love love. And let's bring up the last photo here. Sorry about this. I'm going to figure this out. And I missed the last photo. Okay. So that was the story of Altchen and Berend-John. I hope you enjoyed it. I've got many, many more stories to come to bring to you. This one was a tale from the province of Overijssel, uh, from Holland. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. And I hope you will join me again for our next story I will have tomorrow. If you've had the opportunity, please go and take a look at my introduction, and that'll help to explain a little bit more about why I have this book and why I'm reading it to you. So have a blessed night, sleep tight, and be well.